My name is Tiffany, and at 32 years old, I can finally say this without flinching. My sister faked emails to get me kicked out of my own home. And years later, when life turned on them and they came crawling back, begging for my help, I couldn't bring myself to forgive. I'd already learned the hard way that some people only love you when you're beneath them. 12 years ago, my entire world was torn apart. Not by a stranger, not by some tragic accident, but by my own family. Specifically, by my sister, Sophie. The golden child. The center of their universe. The woman who could do no wrong, even when she was the one holding the knife. I was 20 then, on the brink of starting college, thinking my future was finally beginning. But overnight, that future was yanked away. Sophie decided to destroy me because I dared to succeed without needing her or our parents. All it took was one lie. And suddenly I was out on the street. See, Sophie was 5 years older than me. And ever since I could remember, she wore favoritism like a crown. My parents adored her in ways that were almost theatrical. When she got an A, they threw a little family party. When I got one, they barely looked up from their dinner plates. "That's nice, Tiff. Pass the salt." It wasn't jealousy that hurt. It was invisibility. I was there, always there, just never enough. When Sophie enrolled in a prestigious university, my parents acted like she had cured cancer. They paid for everything: tuition, a high-rise condo, a new wardrobe that cost more than my first car. And when my acceptance letter came from a respected college in France, my dream program, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd do the same for me. I was wrong. "We can't afford that right now," my dad said, avoiding eye contact. "We already paid for Sophie's education. We have to think about our future." By future, they meant the small business they were planning, one that would supposedly secure their retirement. It didn't matter that I'd gotten into a program I'd worked my entire life for. I wasn't Sophie, and that was all that mattered. I offered to take out a loan, asked if they'd just co-sign to help me get better rates. They refused. "You'll have to figure it out on your own," Mom said. Her voice was calm, but final, the same tone she used when she told the dog to get off the couch. And so I did figure it out. I found another way. I called my Aunt Caroline, my dad's older sister. She was everything my parents weren't: accomplished, kind, grounded. A neurosurgeon who carried her success like a secret, not a weapon. My parents always had this unspoken resentment toward her. My dad especially. He'd smile through gritted teeth at family gatherings, pretending not to notice how everyone gravitated toward her. I didn't want to ask her for help, but desperation doesn't care about pride. When I told her my situation, she didn't hesitate. "Of course I'll help you," she said immediately. "You should have called me sooner." Her warmth almost made me cry. Still, I was terrified my father would find out. "Please," I whispered, "keep this between us. He'll lose it if he knows I came to you." Caroline promised to stay quiet, and for a few blissful weeks it seemed like everything would work out. Tuition was paid. My travel plans were set. I was ready to leave for France. Then Sophie found out. To this day, I don't know how. Maybe she saw a notification, maybe she went through my emails, or maybe she was just doing what she always did, digging for something to twist. When I came home one evening, I knew instantly something was wrong. My room was empty, boxes stacked like I was moving out, clothes folded, books sealed, even my mattress leaned against the wall. In the living room, my parents sat stiffly on the couch, their faces tight with anger. Sophie stood near them, arms crossed, a faint smirk playing on her lips. My father didn't waste time. He threw a folder at me. "Explain this," he barked. Confused, I opened it, and my blood went cold. Dozens of printed emails, supposedly between Aunt Caroline and me. Only they weren't real. They made it look like I'd betrayed my parents, sold private business information in exchange for Caroline's financial help. I remember my hands shaking, my mouth going dry as I tried to speak. "These are fake," I said. "She made these. Look at the formatting." But it didn't matter. "We trusted you," Mom said quietly, tears in her eyes. "And this is how you repay us?" They didn't want to hear the truth. They wanted a reason to believe Sophie. She had always been their truth. I begged them to listen, to let me prove it. But my father only said, "Pack your things. We can't have a traitor in this house." A traitor. That's what I was to them. Not a daughter, not a person, just a liability they wanted gone. So I packed what I could. Clothes, a few books, my laptop. Ironically, the same one Sophie had used to forge those emails. And left. Aunt Caroline opened her door before I could even knock twice. She didn't ask for explanations. She didn't need to. One look at me, red eyes, trembling hands, and she said softly, "You're home now." And that was the first time in years that home actually meant something. Caroline let me stay as long as I needed. She made space for me not just in her house, but in her life. She became the mother I never really had. Patient, kind, never demanding more than I could give. Over tea one night, she told me things I'd never known. How my father's jealousy of her started decades ago. How he'd always needed to feel superior. He loved the idea of control, she said gently. And you threatened that. Because you're like me, I didn't know whether to cry or thank her. All those years of feeling small, dismissed, unimportant. It all clicked. My father didn't hate me. He feared me, because I reminded him of the sister who'd outshone him his entire life. Living with Caroline gave me peace, but not closure. Every night, I still half expected a call, a message, something from my parents. But days turned into weeks, then months, and nothing came. Not even a text. At first, I was furious, then heartbroken, then numb. Caroline never pushed. She let me heal at my own pace. She helped me pack for France, drove me to the airport, and hugged me like she never wanted to let go. "You owe them nothing," she whispered. "Remember that." I tried to. Years passed. I graduated, built a life, a career, a home of my own. But I never forgot the look on Sophie's face that night. The gleam of victory in her eyes, while mine filled with tears. And then, after more than a decade of silence, they showed up again. By then, their business had collapsed. Debts piled up. Sophie's perfect life had started to crumble. Suddenly, the traitor they'd cast out was their only hope. They called. They texted. They even came by my apartment once. Standing on the other side of my door like ghosts from a past I'd buried, I didn't open it. I stood there quietly, hand resting on the cool wood, listening to their muffled voices. "Tiffany, please," my mother said. "We just want to talk." But I had nothing left to say. When they finally left, I locked the door, leaned my forehead against it, and breathed. The silence that followed wasn't lonely. It was sacred. I made myself tea, sat on the edge of the counter, and texted Aunt Caroline. They came by. I said no. Her reply came seconds later. "Proud of you. Come over tomorrow." I smiled, set, my phone face down, and let the quiet stretch around me. Soft, uncluttered, honest. For the first time in my life, the peace in the room belonged entirely to me. The next morning, I woke before my alarm. The room still bluish with early light. I made a list. Mundane things. Laundry, groceries. Replace the flickering bulb in the hallway. Finally order a frame for the print I'd brought back from France. It felt almost rebellious to care about small, ordinary tasks, more than I cared about their chaos. I showered, dressed, and on a whim took the long way to Caroline's, walking instead of riding, letting the city spool by in storefronts and bus breaks and a kid tugging a dog that was much too big for him. For once, my thoughts didn't loop back to old grievances like a scratched track. They wandered forward. Caroline met me at the door in leggings and an oversized sweater, hair in a messy knot, the smell of coffee and warm butter trailing her into the kitchen. "How are you, Tiffany?" she asked, and hearing my name in her voice did something kind to my chest. I hadn't realized how rarely anyone had said it without an agenda. I smiled, better than I expected. We ate toast with apricot jam and talked logistics, always her way of anchoring emotion in something actionable. "Do you want me to handle any communication?" she asked. "Tell them to stop showing up." I shook my head. I think they got the message. Caroline tilted her head. "And if they don't?" I took a breath. "Then I'll repeat myself." She nodded as if I'd just passed a test. "Good. Boundaries are muscles. They get stronger with use." We switched to safer topics, a case she'd scrubbed in on last week, intricate and delicate, a paper I was outlining for my team, trying to make a mess of data tell a coherent story. She listened, really listened, the way she always had. And when I left, she tucked a foil-wrapped slice of lemon loaf into my bag like I was still the kid who'd sneak seconds when no one looked. Days turned into a new kind of normal. Work, runs by the river, dinner with friends who didn't keep score. I changed the locks, something I should have done a long time ago, and sent a short email to my building manager authorizing no one but me to receive keys. I unblocked no numbers. I answered nothing that didn't sound like respect. It was astonishing how much space opened up when I stopped volunteering to be hurt. Sophie tried one more time, not with a knock, but with a performance. She posted an airy, self-pitying thread on social media about family betrayal and refusing to help when help is needed, complete with a filtered photo of a hand clutching a mug beside a wilting plant. Mutual acquaintances sent me screenshots, their texts cautious. "You okay? Do you want me to say something?" I typed one reply and sent it to all of them. "I'm fine. Please don't engage. Thank you for checking on me." And because I meant it, I felt no bitterness in my thumbs as they hit send. A week passed. 2. The world didn't tilt without me propping up their stories. Their business didn't magically revive on the fuel of my guilt. Bills came. I paid them. My plants thrived. Dramatic little things turning their leaves along the light like dancers. I kept going to therapy. Another quiet rebellion I'd started in France. And every time the therapist asked, "Where do you feel that in your body?" I had a clearer answer, not a theory, a map. Then, because life is perverse and refuses to arrange itself into tidy acts, I saw my parents out in public. It was a Sunday afternoon at the market near the river, the one with the good olives, and the woman who sells bread baked in pans older than I am. I rounded a corner and there they were, by the tomatoes. My mother with that purposeful frown she wears when she wants to look competent. My father holding a list like a lifeline. My first instinct was to duck behind a pyramid of oranges, but something steadier rose up and told me I didn't have to hide. I straightened, stepped into the aisle, and kept walking. My mother saw me first. Her mouth parted. Her hand went to her chest, theatrical as ever. My father's eyes flicked to mine and then away as if looking hurt. I stopped at the end of the table. Not too close, not cruel, not warm, neutral. "Hello," I said. My mother swallowed. "Tiffany," like a plea and a reprimand wound together. My father nodded. Emotion so small it could have been a tremor. For a few seconds we stood there in the humid scent of tomatoes and basil, suspended. Then my mother rallied. "We were going to call you," she said quickly. "We've been thinking." I didn't rescue her from the silence. I didn't fill in the words she couldn't find. I waited, and when nothing coherent arrived, I said, "I hope you're well," and stepped around them to the next vendor. It wasn't a performance. It was simply what I had in me to give. My heart thudded, but it didn't splinter. I bought olives, nodded to the bread woman, and walked out under a sky so bright it made the river look like hacked metal. That evening, I sat in my balcony with a bowl of pasta and no appetite to match the day's courage. Courage is exhausting. It uses muscles you forget you have. I let the noodles go cold and watched the lights come on in the building across from mine. A grid of little lives assembling themselves into whatever passed for home. I thought about the child I'd been. the one who learned to read the room before she learned to read books, who measured love and chores completed and grades perfected and quiet kept. I told her out loud because sometimes you need to hear the thing you know. You didn't do anything wrong. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, but I recognized the rhythm. My mother again, even without her name. We saw you today. You look good. We miss you. Can we talk? You let the screen dim. I knew what would happen if I engaged the same carousel of amnesia. Apology as leverage, need disguised as reconciliation. I wasn't interested in writing that animal anymore. I opened my notes app and wrote a sentence I could paste whenever I needed it. I'm not available for contact. I wish you well. Then I copied it into the message field, added, please do not come to my home uninvited, and hit send. Minutes later, 3 dots appeared, vanished, reappeared. Then, okay, a period. No flare. No dagger made of italics. I set the phone down. The night air smelled like heat lifting off concrete and someone else's jasmine. Somewhere a siren wailed and went quiet. Time did not gallop after that. It padded. I took a weekend trip with friends and learned that laughter can exist without apology. I presented my paper, and my manager used the word leadership in a way that didn't make me want to crawl out of my skin. I mailed Caroline a framed copy of a photo of the 2 of us on my graduation day, her chin tipped against my temple, both of us squinting into a future neither of us felt obligated to pretend would be easy. Eventually, a letter arrived. Real paper. My mother's handwriting on the envelope, careful and looping, the way she wrote labels for cookie tins at Christmas. I put it on the table and walked around it for an hour. Then I sliced it open with a butter knife and read. It wasn't a confession. Not in the way I might have wanted when I was 20 and sleeping on Caroline's guest bed, twisting hurt into the shape of hope. It was human in the smaller sense. Admissions braided with excuses. The words sorry, working too hard, my name written twice as if to cast a spell. There was a sentence about Sophie. Vague, defensive. There was a sentence about the business, bleak, practical. There was one line that snagged my breath. We thought we were protecting our family, and we chose the wrong way to love you. I put the letter back in the envelope and slid it into a drawer, not hide it, to keep it from bleeding into everything. I went for a run, my feet making small proofs across the path. When I came back, I brewed tea and stood at the window while steam fogged the glass. I don't know what will happen next. That's not a cliffhanger. It's a life. Maybe one day there will be a conversation that doesn't bruise. Maybe there won't. The point. The thing I keep returning to. The thing that has made. All the difference is that my life is not a court where they get to appeal until a judge rules in their favor. It's a house with a door, and I, Tiffany, get to decide who crosses the threshold. Tonight, I'll water the plants and answer the friend who asked if I want to try that new Thai place on the corner. I'll text Caroline a photo of the lemon loaf crumbs I found at the bottom of my bag, a tiny echo of care. I'll sleep. If tomorrow brings another knock, another letter, another test of whether I mean what I say, I'll meet it at my pace in my voice. I used to think forgiveness was a key I had to hand over to be considered good. But it turns out it's a room I can enter alone whenever I want without letting anyone else in. And if I never cross that threshold with them, it doesn't make me cruel. It makes me free. Months passed, and life settled into a rhythm I hadn't known was possible. Peaceful mornings. A kitchen that stayed clean because it was mine. Work that challenged me, but didn't consume me. I still thought of them sometimes. My parents, Sophie. But the memories no longer stung like open wounds. They were dull now, softened by distance, and the quiet comfort of a life built on my own terms. One afternoon, while I was at my desk, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then something, maybe instinct, maybe curiosity, made me answer. Hello. A man's voice came through, steady but unfamiliar. Is this Tiffany? Tiffany Evans. Yes, who's speaking? My name is Dr. Patel. I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital. Your sister, Sophie Evans, listed you as her emergency contact. For a moment, everything froze. The ticking clock, the soft hum of my computer, even me breath. What happened? I asked, my voice barely steady. She was involved in a minor car accident, he said. Nothing life-threatening, but she's shaken up and asked for you. She's stable, but we'd like someone to accompany her home. I swallowed hard. Did you call our parents? They're on their way, he replied. But she insisted we contact you first. For several seconds, I just stared at the sunlight cutting through the blinds. My pulse was uneven, torn between the ache of old betrayal and the echo of blood ties I'd spent years trying to sever. Finally, I said, "I'll be there soon." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and nostalgia, both sharp and sickly. I found Sophie sitting on a gurney, her arm in a sling, her makeup smudged, her confidence gone. When she saw me, her eyes widened as if she didn't believe I'd actually come. "Tiffany," she breathed. Her voice was small, almost childlike. "You came." I stood at the foot of the bed, unsure whether to feel pity or anger. "You listed me as your emergency contact." Her lips trembled. "I didn't know who else to put." I almost laughed. "You have our parents. They don't pick up anymore," she admitted. "Not since everything fell apart with the business. They're staying with Aunt Caroline now. That caught me off guard." "With Caroline?" She nodded weakly. "They sold the house. The shop closed last month. For a while, neither of us spoke. The air between us was full of things we'd never said. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Tiffany, for what I did. For everything." Her voice cracked and something in me shifted. I had imagined this moment before, how I'd react if Sophie ever apologized. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated. But looking at her now, pale and bruised, all I felt was tired. "I believe you're sorry," I said quietly. "But that doesn't undo what happened." "I know," she murmured. "I ruined everything. I was jealous. I wanted to be the one they were proud of." I let out a slow breath. "They weren't proud of either of us, Sophie. They were proud of the image they created. And when it cracked, we both paid the price." Tears slipped down her cheeks, and for once, I didn't feel satisfaction in seeing her cry. I felt human. The nurse returned with paperwork, and Sophie's discharge instructions broke the silence. "She'll need someone to stay with her for a few days," the nurse said, glancing at me. I hesitated. "I can help you get home," I told Sophie, "but after that you'll have to manage on your own." She nodded. "That's more than I deserve." The drive was quiet. She stared out the window, her reflection faint in the glass, and I wondered how many nights she'd spent thinking about what she'd done. When we reached her apartment, a shadow of its former self, furniture gone, walls bare, she turned to me. "Do you ever think we could be sisters again?" she asked softly. I studied her face, looking for the girl I once knew beneath the guilt and exhaustion. "Maybe someday," I said. "But not today," she nodded, accepting it. "Thank you for coming, Tiffany." "You're welcome," I said, and meant it. I left her at the door, walking down the hallway with the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. I didn't owe her forgiveness, but I'd given her humanity, and that was enough. When I got home, I called Aunt Caroline. She answered on the second ring. "I heard," she said before I could speak. "Your mother told me." "How are they?" I asked. Older Caroline sighed, and quieter. Regret ages people faster than time ever could. "They've asked about you." I stared at the ceiling. "What did you tell them?" "That you're living well," she said, "and that they have no right to interrupt your peace unless you invite them." A small smile tugged at my lips. "Thank you. That's what family should do," she said simply. That night, I lit a candle in my living room and sat beside the window, watching the flame flicker against the glass. I thought about how far I'd come, from the girl whose life fit in cardboard boxes to the woman who finally owned her space, her choices, her boundaries. Sophie's apology didn't erase the past, and my parents' regret didn't restore what was lost, but I had something better than their approval. Now I had clarity. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a door you opened for someone else. It was a window you cracked for yourself, just enough to let the air change. And as the candle burned lower, I whispered to the quiet room, "I'm finally free." Weeks went by after Sophie's accident, and the quiet that followed felt different, softer, less haunted. No late-night texts, no sudden knocks, no hidden guilt pressing on my chest. For the first time in years, peace wasn't something I had to defend. It simply existed. I threw myself into work. My team had just landed a major client, and the office buzzed with that rare good kind of chaos. People stayed late, not out of fear but excitement. When the presentation wrapped successfully, my manager clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You really turned this project around, Tiffany. You've got something special." Those words sank deep precisely because they came without strings. No manipulation, no comparison, no half-compliment laced with expectation, just acknowledgement. I walked home under a lavender sky, carrying takeout in one hand and an odd sense of ease in the other. That night I sat on my balcony with my laptop open, not for work, but to write. It started as a few notes, memories, fragments of old pain, but the words kept coming. I wrote about Caroline, about the betrayal, the loneliness, the freedom that came after. I didn't know what it would become, but it felt necessary, like rinsing out something that had lingered too long. Then, one evening, an email appeared in my inbox with a subject line that froze me. From Mom. My heart skipped, but I clicked. The message was short. Tiffany, Caroline told us you've been doing well. We're glad. We wanted to thank you for helping Sophie after her accident. She's doing better. She's even started working again part-time. I know there's a lot we can't undo, but I wanted you to know that we're proud of you. Truly, Mom. No guilt, just words. For a long moment, I stared at the email, unsure what I felt. Gratitude, skepticism, maybe both. I didn't respond. Some messages don't need replies. Their purpose is to settle ghosts, not start conversations. Days later, Caroline invited me for dinner. When I arrived, I found her setting the table with her usual precision. Linen napkins, candles, the smell of roasted vegetables filling the air. She looked at me over her glasses. I heard about your mother's email. You really do know everything? I said, smiling. She told me she sent it, Caroline replied. She said she didn't expect an answer. She just wanted you to know she's learning. Learning what? That love without respect isn't love, Caroline said softly. It's control. I sat down, the weight of her words pressing gently against something inside me. Do you think they'll ever change? She shrugged. People don't change easily, Tiffany. But they can wake up. Sometimes a difference is enough. We ate quietly for a while. Then she reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. You've done the hardest thing, she said. You stopped trying to make them see you. You saw yourself instead. I blinked back tears I didn't expect. I used to think walking away made me cold. It made you whole, she said. There's a difference. After dinner, I drove home with the windows down, the city lights stretching into golden ribbons on the pavement. I thought about everything. Sophie's trembling apology, my parents' silence, Caroline's steady kindness. All of it was part of the same mosaic. Pain, forgiveness, distance, growth. I didn't need to choose one over the other anymore. They could coexist just like I could. Months later, my story, the one I'd written on that balcony, found its way online. I hadn't planned to share it publicly, but I did. It went viral. The headline simple and raw. My family chose my sister over me. It was the best thing that ever happened. Hundreds of messages followed. Some from strangers who'd lived the same heartbreak. Others from people still trying to find their way out. One message stood out. A young woman who wrote, "Your story made me realize I'm allowed to stop chasing people who don't see me." I read her words over and over until they blurred. That's when it hit me. The pain I had spent years resenting had finally become something useful. Something that helped someone else stand up the way I had learned to. Sometimes healing doesn't come with a grand reconciliation or a tearful hug on a porch. Sometimes it comes in the quiet act of telling your truth and realizing it no longer hurts to speak it. One Sunday morning, I visited Caroline's garden. The air was crisp, the smell of mint and earth mixing with sunlight. She was kneeling by the hydrangeas, her hands dirt-streaked but graceful. "You look happy," she said, glancing up. "I am," I replied. "Finally. Good," she smiled. "You earned it." I helped her plant a few new seedlings. As we worked, I thought about all the roots we couldn't see beneath the soil, how they tangled, how they held each other up even when noon was watching. That's what life had become. Not perfect, not painless, but grounded. When I left, Caroline handed me a small clay pot with a sprouting vine for your balcony. She said, "Something to grow with you." That night, I set the pot on the railing, watered it gently, and watched the sky fade into dusk. The city hummed below, and I felt no ache, no anger, just a steady, quiet joy. I whispered to the wind, maybe to my younger self, maybe to the people who once broke me. Thank you for teaching me what love isn't. Then I smiled because finally I knew what it